Stuckey. Let's do a quick look back to last week. Starting on Saturday, I had Ohio State in the points, even though I don't even like Ryan Day. It's just like that was a lot of points. It was close. I thought actually Ohio State, and you've been saying this for a while, their defense is clearly a lot better than it's been. They definitely didn't get housed, but Michigan covered on that one. But the big game of the day came on Sunday, Bills-Eagles. You've been all over, statistically. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we're recording this before the Cowboy game. Their point differential is 100 points difference than the Cowboys. And that's pretty wild, right? And the Bills didn't just have them on the ropes. I mean, we're kicking their ass, but they find a way to fucking win. Now, the Bills covered, but holy moly, this Eagles team. I mean, are they going to go 15-2 with a point differential of 50?
Yeah, things keep progressing the way that they do. Luckily, the Bills won the toss. I mean, but the Eagles have had something. Well, we'll talk about them in a second, but they've had something just every week. There's a bunch of things that just break their way to get these wins. And you got to give them credit for, they deserve some credit for pulling them out. But last week it was the officials. I mean, some of the missed PI calls. There was 10 penalties on the Bills in the first half. 8 in the first quarter, most of any quarter in the league this year. And then the Eagles didn't get their second penalty until a minute to go in the game. Then obviously the Bills missed 2 field goals. The Eagles hit a 60-yarder, but luckily, and I was on my knees almost, just saying, please win the toss. And Buffalo luckily did. Otherwise, they probably would have lost by 6.
How about the drive really quick at the end of regulation? Sean McDermott playing this like prevent defense, just giving up easy yards and letting them just, I mean, he gave them 30 yards. They didn't even have to break a sweat. It's like, what? Why don't you just play normal? It's raining. The chances of them hitting some crazy big play is difficult. I don't understand. I understand prevent defense. If you're up, they need to score a touchdown, right, to tie.
Yeah.
But to go in that position to just play way off and give up easy yards, you're one broken tackle or a juke away from giving up a 25-yard play that way. I fucking despise that.
Awful. Yeah. And then he wasted a timeout to ice the kicker. I think in that situation, you give the kicker more time with like conditions and to figure out how they want to kick it and like get comfortable in the spot. I think it's bad. And then because of that, you only have one timeout left. You get the ball back with 25 seconds left. You have a kicker with a big leg, and then you take a knee. And this game was for your season, and you just saw
and a playmaking quarterback with a big arm.
Yeah, 2 years prior, you kicked off, tied, and the Chiefs scored, went down the field in 13 seconds and kicked a field goal. And you're leaving so much up to a coin toss. Your season went down to coin toss. I mean, apparently you didn't learn anything. So, yeah, that was a wild game. Fortunately, Buffalo held on for the cover. Your Ohio State bet, I think that was actually the right side. I mean, if you go back and look, McCord ultimately just wasn't the guy. He wasn't going to win a national title with the way that he was playing. But if you go back to that game, questionable touchdown call, which I actually thought was really an interception. Michigan 3 for 3 on 4th down. And Ohio State, McCord gifted them a touchdown with an interception, but they still had a chance to win the game at the end. So I don't think that was a terrible bet. But
JJ was better than I thought. I mean, he played better in that game than he had, to me, like the way he had looked previously.
Yeah. I think that he might have been dealing with a little something, and I think they were probably just playing everything close to the vest over the 2 previous weeks. But speaking of looking back at last weekend, I was giving you some shit on Twitter. How did your Traeger turkey turn out?
Not bad. Now, yeah. my brother, who is a Traeger master, I would say, it wasn't a solo mission. He, by the time we threw that thing in at about 12:30, brined it for 24 hours.
That's a key. You got to brine.
So brined it, brought it out, about noon on Turkey Day. Ton of butter inside. You had it spatchcocked so you could kind of break it down. Butter all over the place, injecting it with butter. Did some seasoning on the outside, and it took about 3 hours. I got this $1,500 Traeger barbecue. The problem is it's a smoker. I tried to barbecue some fillets on it. It's a little weird. Like it's obviously made for specific things, but the turkey is sweet. I think I'm going to have to, the ribs, the tri-tips, some of the pork, some brisket, things like that. I'm just going to have to learn on the fly. I've never been a smoker, but now maybe I am.
Yeah, we used to do it.
Very moist.
What's that?
Very moist meat,
Yes. Yeah.
It's
once you get it right, I mean,
oh,
it's amazing. And yeah, I guess out your way, you gotta get it down for some money tri-tip sandwiches.
Exactly. Okay, let's hit on a couple games Saturday. Obviously, Michigan's an enormous favorite over Iowa. Bama, while they were already in this game, let's face it, they got pretty lucky. I mean, a great throw, great play, but to win a game like that, I mean, maybe it was a football gods throwing Saban a bone back for the kick six way back in the day. But now, a little like when you say a divisional game, where if you have like a 10-win team playing like a 3-win team in late November, early December, sometimes some of these games are going to be tight. That game, Auburn had just lost to New Mexico State, which was probably the worst thing that ever happened to Bama because that's going to wake them up. It's in Auburn. The place was going bananas. I saw a stat this week that Kirby has more national championships than wins against Saban. Now, obviously, he didn't play him last year because LSU beat him. So I would say this Georgia team over the last 3 years is a little different than the versions he's had before. It's more their equal. But is there something of, mentor versus the mentee? It's obviously one of the goals. I think this is one of the better coaching jobs Saban has done. I mean, early on, you're like, God, is this team going to go like 8-4? I had a scouting buddy that had went through there. He's like, bro, I've been going through this program for 12, 15 years. I think they are going to struggle to get to 9 wins. And Milroe obviously played better. The schedule, I mean, they took advantage of it, but they did. I mean, beat the shit out of Lane. Like they won that kind of tight Texas A&M game when Texas A&M was kind of still alive and playing well, and we know how talented they are. So they've just played well, and they found a way to win that game. But is this a sucker's bet? I see it's 5.5, or is it just, you can never discount a GOAT on his, he doesn't have that much longer left.
Yeah, I mean, the 4th and 30 teams were 0 of 90 on 4th and 30 or more over the past 2 seasons before that play. Auburn, for some reason, only rushed 2, which I hate in that situation. And they had a quarterback spy. I mean, who cares if the quarterback runs there?
How does a guy get behind you if you're a DB? Like, how is all the DBs, not – there are 2 – one in front and one behind everybody. How do you let anyone get behind you?
Incredible, yeah. Milroe does throw one of the most accurate deep balls in NCAA history.
Looked like Favre. I mean, it had a little loop to it, but it was a beautiful pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Saban's done a great job this year. If you go back earlier in the season, Milroe got benched before a game when Alabama played at South Florida and almost lost. Yeah, I think it was 6-3 in the 4th quarter against South Florida, and Bama was a laughing stock. So yeah, Milroe has really turned it around. They made some schematic changes on offense. I don't hate the bet. I make it around 5-ish, so I don't see much value. I did play a little under 55.5. But it's scary because if you go back and look since 2005, the SEC Championship has. If you just go back and look at the scores, you'll notice this right away, has gone over 13. The over's 13-4-1. You get all those premier athletes on a fast track, right? You're used to, you're now playing in a dome. There tends to be points, but neither of these offenses have really played a good defense all year. If you look at who Georgia's played, I mean, Georgia's schedule's been laughable.
Awful.
Their average schedule of opponents faced from a defensive perspective, 88th. So they haven't really faced a good defense. And I trust both defenses more than I do each offense. Both teams are playing really slow this year too. A lot of familiarity in the staff. So I don't know. I thought it was a little too high. Don't love anything there, but you're right. This is just with the familiarity. Last time I think Bama was a 6-point dog a couple years ago, and they won outright in the SEC Championship.
Kind of took it to him. I remember in the second half, right?
Yep. So yeah, there's so much talent on the field, so much familiarity. that if you want to take the dog here, I don't think it's a terrible bet. I just am pretty close to where the market is. I think it should be a good competitive game.
Well, to me, the Big 12 championship is like a multiple touchdown game. Obviously, the Big 10 game, I mean, you could probably make that spread fucking 35 and people probably still take Michigan. You know, if you're listening to this on Friday, the Pac-12 game, I mean, by kickoff, I mean, it's hovering around 9.5, 10 points. I mean, that's a lot for a team that Washington hasn't lost. I mean, these are enormous spreads, right, for championship games. Do you have any in the ACC games? A little weird because Jordan Travis had his ankle shattered, so it's hard to even, I don't even know what to make of that. But of the other three with big spreads, any dog that you like to win outright if you were going to, sprinkle a little?
Yeah,
I guess you wouldn't even count Iowa, so it'd just be Oklahoma State or Washington.
Yeah, it's Oklahoma State. It's hard for me to see them having a chance to winning. I mean, Gundy, though, in these spots against ranked teams and underdog, he always seems to overperform. But you can't run on Texas. Arguably the best run defense in college football, and the entire Oklahoma State offense is Ollie Gordon, their star running back. The only time they've been able to throw is when he gets going and it sets up play action, but no one can run on Texas. Many teams have tried. No one has been able to do it, including Alabama. And then on the other side, Oklahoma State's secondary is horrendous. So Texas, look, I'd be able to look Texas team total over 34.5. I think might be a good look there because they need to win. They need to win with style. The committee always says it doesn't matter, but yeah, they're humans. So I think Texas wants to put up a number here. There's a reason that Texas, that line opened at the 13.5, 14 minutes. There's been money that crossed that pretty easily. When I look at those other underdogs, I think Oregon is going to win this game. They are the better team. Washington's offense also just hasn't been right, but I mean, it's a very efficient line. I mean, it's been priced into it. There's only been two other instances where an undefeated top 5 team has been an underdog of more than a touchdown in the conference championship over the past 30 years. It happened with Alabama and Florida back in, I want to say 2008. And Alabama was a 7.5 point dog. They lost by 10. And then it happened Notre Dame Clemson back in the COVID year. And that's the only other time where the two teams actually played each other. Notre Dame beat Clemson in the regular season. And this is when the Notre Dame was in the ACC for that year. Then in the ACC Championship, they were 11-point dogs. They lost by 30. But keep in mind, Trevor Lawrence didn't play in the first meeting during the regular season. But this is unprecedented. Like, two top 5 teams, you already beat them, and now you're catching close to double digits on a neutral field. I don't see any value in Oregon. I do think Florida State's going to go down. This is just the team. Look, Florida's defense last week, Tate Rodemaker, I think it's like a 10-point drop off from Jordan Travis to Tate Rodemaker. And I think the worst thing that happened to Florida State, obviously besides Travis getting hurt, is Louisville losing to Kentucky last week. I think they'll come out focused here, but they had 220 total yards against Florida. Florida's defense is horrendous. They've given up 430 plus yards in 4 straight games. I think 40 plus every week leading up to that. Florida State broke a run late and finished with 220 yards of total offense. I trust the Louisville offense much more. Games on a neutral field. Could be a lot of rain. I think Rodemaker is going to make a couple key mistakes. And I think Louisville wins that game. App State, if you something in the group of 5, I like to. But yeah, I think that the team that's going to go down that I feel confident the most in the group of 5 games is Florida State, which would solve all of the discourse and arguments that are so meaningless because we're never going to have to do this again on Twitter about most deserving or best teams.
I know.
At the end of the day, look, yes, it's a kind of a hybrid. It's most deserving, but also you want to put the best teams in. You use the resume to judge that. But if a team that loses their quarterback and they're 10 points worse, no one want, like, you can say it's a committee. It's ultimately a TV show. You could say you're not in. I would not put Florida State in. The one caveat being, look, you have two chances. Last week you won, but you were outgained 225 to 224. You have one more, chance to prove it. If Rodemaker comes out here, looks amazing, right? He has a pretty good Louisville defense with two potential pro corners, and he throws for 300 yards, and Florida State wins by 2 touchdowns. I'm cool. Let them in. They deserve it, and their quarterback looked competent enough. But if they lose, obviously they're out. But if they win like 13-10 in a monsoon, get them out. No one. I mean, we don't need to wait a month to see Georgia as a 17-point favorite over the Seminoles with a backup quarterback.
Totally agree. Before we dive into the NFL, I'm not some recruiting nerd. I do think this transfer portal, when it comes to the quarterbacks, is really fascinating. And the Duke quarterbacks in it, obviously Cam Ward at Washington State is in it. Like those type players, whether they go to Ohio State, maybe they go to Florida State, whether they, wherever they go next year, just has huge implications, especially now with the 12-team playoff, right? I mean, there are sometimes I see a quarterback, it's like, this is a big move. It's like, this guy was not even good this year. But there are going to be a couple, and we've seen this now multiple times, right? I mean, hell, you got Penix and Bo Nix. And I think Bo Nix is a good example. There's always going to be a guy that you think, this guy was kind of shitty, and then he resurrects his career. But I think it's going to be fascinating. Riley Leonard and Cam Ward. Obviously, I don't know if you saw Matt Rule said yesterday the going rate's like $1.5–2 million for these guys. And to me, if I was a booster or part of a program, like I wouldn't be cutting $400,000 checks to high school recruits. Hell, I watched the UCLA guy this year, 5-star, chip stolen from Oregon for a bunch of money. He's fucking terrible. It's too risky. But like you get Cam Ward, you got a real player. I'd be like, I'll cut the checks for that. Listen, you can say what you want. I think Deion got humbled a little bit this year, but he is right. Like we're not going to be an ATM machine for the recruits, but the transfer portal is a different story. So to me, Riley Leonard, fascinating guy. I think Notre Dame feels like an early leader. And Cam Ward, I think everyone's going to be all over him. So it's Alabama. I mean, all these teams. I mean, you're talking huge money.
Yeah, Riley Leonard makes a ton of sense. Just like, similar to the Sam Hartman move, almost like ACC school down on Tobacco Road, kind of just being groomed and then transfers up to Notre Dame. But I agree. I mean, Deion is taking that approach. I think in the recruiting rankings, they're like 60th.
They're not good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there's also the trickle down effect of a team. Now, unfortunately, I still like them this weekend, but it's dicey. There's a team like SMU that, their quarterback Preston Stone is out for the year. The crazy thing about this weekend, one of the hardest weekends, college championship weekends, conference championship weekends that I've ever had to handicap. On Saturday, there's 16 quarterbacks that'll play. 9 of the 16 either didn't start the year as the starter or got benched at one point during the year. Wow. And you're going to have a guy, in Florida State, a true backup who looked bad, maybe 10-point drop off, but still a lot of uncertainty. And then SMU has, a kid who was the highest recruit in program history, Preston Stone, 4 borderline 5-star. He broke his leg last week. He's out for the year. So now you're going to this other kid, huge unknown with Kevin Jennings. But SMU, their defense did a complete 180. It was, they were one of the worst defenses in college football last year. And if you look, and then this year they were out of this world, top 5 in success rate, yards per play allowed. You look, and it's just, they brought in, I think 9 of their 11 starters were.
Are they in the Big 12? No, they're not, huh?
No, they're probably going to move to the ACC.
Okay,
is what the move is there. But they have like 3 Miami cast-offs. Guys that were getting time, but just not starting consistently. A couple Big Ten guys. And then, so you could see some of these, you could just, it doesn't have to be a group of 5 team. SMU, I think, is eventually going to be the ACC. But you could see a team that does it right, just all of a sudden one unit can drastically change if you hit on all of your portal additions. So, it definitely, and you couldn't do that with recruiting. You couldn't just drastically turn around and your entire defense in one season. That takes time. So yeah, it's a whole new world. We'll see if a team like Clemson continues to be stubborn, because it's definitely holding them back.